بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I praise Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. I thank Allah ta'ala for the ni'mah, the blessing of Islam. I ask Allah to raise the status of Sayyiduna Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family and his companions, and all of those who follow them in excellence until the day of judgment. We welcome y'all to our program today, the importance of secular education in our communities, in our Islamic communities. And alhamdulillah, today we are joined with Ustadha Sheikha Nuruddin Knight and our beloved sister Safiya Amatullah, and they will be joined two other sisters with us, and they will tell us about their journey as Muslim women in secular education, its benefits, its challenges, and we're going to, alhamdulillah, tonight listen to our sisters and try to benefit from their experiences, and then talk about how those experiences could be of benefit to our communities, to our youth, to our families, and what resources that they have discovered in their pursuit of education. And also they may talk about some of their experiences in between Islamic education and secular education. So inshallah, we'll start the discussion with each of our guests giving a 5-minute discussion about their background in education and about themselves, what they wish to speak about. And we'll start with Ustadha Nuruddin Knight. Barakallahu fiki, tafaddal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm grateful to be here with Imam Amin and with Sister Safiya and the other sisters who will join us. Alhamdulillah, this is such an important topic that really doesn't get much attention in our communities. People are essentially left to their own devices when it comes to secular knowledge and whether or not they're going to pursue it. And much of the time, secular knowledge can be given a bad rap as useless, except maybe in the circumstance of making money. And I would even say for us in the African American community, which includes the African American Muslim community, then we don't even necessarily have that emphasis put on even to make a living, that one should, as a possible route, get higher education. So it's really valuable to talk about that on this platform. For myself, alhamdulillah, then I pursued an undergraduate degree in psychology and then followed that with a master's degree in psychology from Columbia University. And my focus was on child and family. And since I was young, I wanted to better understand people. When I was very young, I thought I wanted to be a philosopher. So that was sort of my first love, whatever sort of concept I had of philosophy and understanding people and understanding the world. And then, alhamdulillah, as I continued my studies, then I ended up going into psychology. And after I was done pursuing my degrees, alhamdulillah, at the same time, during my graduate school and maybe the last year of my undergraduate degree, then I was also able to pursue Islamic knowledge. So alhamdulillah, Imam Amin was coming to New York and teaching at a center at that time. So I was able to learn from him. And there was another sheikh in our area that we were able to learn from and take advantage of that. And then when I left, when I graduated from graduate school, then I went to Jordan to try and further that knowledge. And, knowledge is an ongoing, can be a slower process, especially when you don't necessarily have the ability or you just don't take that chunk of time like some people get to take 5 years, 10 years to go overseas and study. So it's an ongoing process, but alhamdulillah, I went to Jordan for a bit, just 2 years, to try and further that Islamic knowledge. For me, especially in studying psychology, the greatest benefit I received from that, I would say, is two things. One is, as I intended, as I desired from young, being able to better understand human beings and human development, and even just to have perspectives. Because I think that sometimes we wrongly think that, and it can be presented this way as well, that secular knowledge is at odds, at war with Islamic religious knowledge. And the reality is it doesn't have to be, and that we can benefit a lot from secular knowledge as long as it doesn't, in fact, go against something within Islam. So benefiting in that way. And then I think secondly, being able to understand the society. Alhamdulillah, now I'm doing stuff like this, doing lectures, doing writing, and being able to utilize not just Islamic knowledge, but also secular knowledge to talk to wider audiences and to Muslims who sometimes go into that secular environment and they don't have any kind of foundational Islamic knowledge. So it's so easy to get confused. But if you have even just the basic foundational Islamic knowledge and you go into that secular space, you can benefit other Muslims a lot, and you can benefit non-Muslims a lot. One thing I wanted to just include in this short intro, I remember years ago hearing Dr. Sherman Jackson saying that if you're not speaking people's language, then there's no point. You want to talk to someone, you have to speak their language. And the language of this society is that secular knowledge. And so I think that as well helps us to bridge the gap in terms of being able to talk to people about Islam, being able to give dawah, even just being able to live in a civil society. So alhamdulillah, that would be all for my introduction, inshallah.
May Allah reward you. Sister Sophia, inshallah, for your opening introductory remarks.
Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you, Sister Nuruddin. That was awesome. Well, what I'd like to say, my experience in the secular or educational studies is different in that I spent my entire academic career basically as non-Muslim. So it wasn't until I finished my second degree that I became more involved in the Islamic community. So I started with a bachelor's in journalism at Michigan State University. At that time, I thought that I wanted to be a broadcast journalist on television. And after that, I pursued a master's in African history. That was at the University of Illinois in Chicago. That was a fascinating experience. Actually, that was where I got like a window view into Islam because a few of my instructors were African, and I learned a lot about African history that I didn't have an opportunity to learn while in high school. I went to a private high school in Farmington Hills, Michigan, called Mercy High School. So I don't know, it was kind of sheltered in that I didn't know about Islam and all the influences that it had on Africans and African Americans. So then after I earned my master's in African history, I earned a master of public health at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. So I have a pretty diverse educational background, and that's pretty much opened up doors for me to be a teacher at all levels. I've taught elementary, middle school, and high school, and all the way up through college. I taught at the University of Phoenix. What I would say is that the secular education has opened doors for me as far as job opportunities, diverse job opportunities. As long as you're able to show your skill sets, different jobs offer different skill sets. But basically, like Sister Nuruddin has been doing, what I've kind of done is like an about face. I have taught at Islamic schools, but right now I'm at a point where I'd like to shift gears and pretty much funnel my skill sets into the community that I'm stationed in Detroit right now. That's at Dar Rahma, and other local masjids if possible. Because that's just, I feel like that's my calling. And throughout my life, it's just, we just change gears and we ask Allah, okay, where do you want me now? How do you want to use me, and how can I be best beneficial to my community? So, that's, I want to use my education to benefit the Muslims, inshallah.
No, barakallahu feekum. May Allah reward you. My first question to both of you, and you can have it from your own views, is why do you think it is important? Because you, even both of you, have pursued higher education all the way up to the master's level. Why did you feel that that was important? And I would like to know your reasons for pursuing higher education.
Assalamu okay, I'll answer that first. I would say I was pretty much following in my mother's footsteps. My mother is a teacher. She's been a high school teacher all my life, and I was inspired by her and her ability to navigate and control the classrooms. High school has always been a challenge, and today it's even more of a challenge. So she's a strong woman, and she takes command of the classroom. She has humor. They respect her. She teaches college. She's awesome. She's still teaching. She teaches online. So, and that was a field that was, the area of online was intimidating to her. She thought she would never go into online education, and here she is. She's online. University. She taught at the University of Phoenix also, and now she's at Wayne State University. So, did I answer your question?
So the main reason for pursuing the education was following in the footsteps of your mother. So
right.
Why did you choose journalism?
Well, in the time, I think it was Carmen Harlan in Detroit that she inspired me, and I thought that I wanted to do broadcast journalism on television. But as my value set changed, I was like, nah, I really don't want to do that. I'm more of a laid back, kind of like behind the scenes person. And I was like, no, that's not really what I want to do. So I just changed my mind. So basically, me pursuing my education was, following behind my mom as a model, as a role model, and also as a means to be able to take care of myself if it ever came to a day and time that I would need to. So it was like, you need to be able to, be independent in the case that you would have to take care of yourself. So it's so far so good.
MashaAllah. Sister Nuruddin, inshallah, if you can address that question. What was your motivation or the reason for you to pursue higher education?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I had that desire to want to better understand people and society. So alhamdulillah, honestly, initially I set out to get my PhD. So I actually kind of stopped short, but inshallah, maybe one day I'll get back to that. So alhamdulillah, after I got out of undergraduate school, I actually went to Jordan for a period of time, for a shorter period of time, and was planning on staying. So really what made me go to graduate school was, alhamdulillah, getting into Columbia, and my parents just say, okay, you have to go to school. Like, you got into this good school, you have to go. But I was grateful that I did go, because once I was in the graduate school environment, it's a different level of learning. When you're in that undergraduate environment, then you're learning, for example, you're learning from textbooks, you're learning from sections of books. You're being given a lot of information and then essentially asked to regurgitate that information. Whereas in graduate school, for most of the classes, then you are reading entire texts, you're exploring more thinkers, but you're also exploring thinkers more deeply. And then you get to have a lot of discussion. So it was, subhanAllah, if I didn't go to graduate school, I think I really would have missed out on that level of education. So that was a great opportunity, just to be able to think on that level and discuss on that level with other people who are interested in that subject. So that was one of the main reasons. And I just wanted to also sort of kind of repeat what Sophia said, because I think it's a good point about us being able to learn secular knowledge so that we can teach other Muslims. And maybe at some point we would, I mean, alhamdulillah, there's Zaytuna and maybe one or two other schools, but having environments where we can learn secular knowledge from Muslims so that Muslims don't have to go into these environments and possibly lose their religion because they're being taught by non-Muslims with certain ideologies. So I just wanted to repeat that point, because that's a really good point and a really good motivation as well.
Barakallahu fiki. Sister Nora Cross has joined us, inshallah. So we're going to double the questions for you, because you came after 2 questions. So I'll give you both of them. Number one, the first is, could you give us an introduction to yourself and your educational background so people will become familiar with it? And then after that, so that's your first 5 minutes. And then the immediate question after that, why did you pursue your field of study? Your mic is on mute. You see it's a mute button? Okay, there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the first question was a quick background overview on my education.
Yes.
Okay. So just quickly, I have an associate's in information technology. I'm a certified machinist, went through an apprenticeship program for that. I have an associate's in manufacturing engineering technology, a bachelor's in manufacturing engineering, and I have a master's degree in manufacturing engineering. So I'm a manufacturing engineer. I've worked in many different industries. Currently, right now, I'm working for one of the big 3, and I'm at the senior level. So everything from initial product design phase all the way to launching out the product. And we build transmissions. So that's a quick what I do as an engineer. What was the next question?
Why did you pursue that field of study?
Oh, I think really 2 reasons. So I was brought up, I'm Jamaican American, but my dad that raised me was Ghanaian. So pretty much I was brought up in an immigrant household, and my father always stressed education. I don't think it was ever a choice for me, because it was something that was instilled in me from before I could remember. So if this is something that you instill in your kids, they really don't make that choice. You really make it for them. So I can't take credit for that. That's my parents, alhamdulillah. They're both deceased. May Allah forgive them their sins and admit them to Jannah. That's something that they gave me. What made me choose engineering is, of course, I like mathematics, science, and physics. That's a given. But it was a challenge for me because it's a predominantly male-dominated field. It's very difficult for women to break into that field and get a meaningful job as an engineer. And so I took that challenge on. It's been very difficult, but I have no regrets. I love what I do. That's pretty much it.
Something that all of you mentioned, I noticed that was a common factor among you, and I want to delve more into that. Y'all all mentioned the influence of your parents in your pursuit of education, or role models for you in education. I'll go to Sister Nora Dean Knight first. Sister Nora, that when we're talking, could you press your mute button so we don't have cross signals? Okay. So, Sister Nora Dean, inshallah, if you could give us some of your insight on the important role of your parents in your development and towards your pursuit of education.
Yeah, for sure. My parents were, alhamdulillah, the biggest factors in my education, in my pursuing education and continuing with education. I taught briefly at an Islamic high school, and I told the kids this before, that when I was in high school, I didn't want to finish. But I didn't have a choice, right? My parents didn't give me the choice to not finish, because I wasn't always a good student. Sometimes I really disliked school and studying. I didn't get into reading until I was an adult. So if it wasn't for their encouragement, my parents would always tell me, you can do better. If I, brought home a bad report card, you can do better than this. You're smart. And it's an interesting thing of did they really believe that, alhamdulillah, this child is smart and she's just not doing the work, or we're going to say this to her so that she can believe it herself. But either way, alhamdulillah, it worked. And so eventually I actually began to enjoy seeking knowledge. But even, it really took my parents' encouragement to keep me on that road. Like I mentioned, well, first, let me say, after I got out of high school, I wanted to take a year off. And a lot of people can stray away from school if they do that. But alhamdulillah, my parents allowed me to do that. And then I had to go to school. It wasn't an option. And then, as I mentioned, when I wanted to just stay in Jordan after I'd gone after graduating from undergraduate school, then my parents encouraged me, told, no, you have to go to graduate school. So honestly, without them pushing me, I would not have gotten the level of education that I got. And it really wasn't until I enjoyed undergraduate school, but it really wasn't until graduate school that I began to love studying and seeking higher education. So that is so crucial. And, I would definitely encourage any parent or parental figure that if you have a child like that in your life who is lazy or not doing their best or whatever it is, you may have to be a bit forceful in encouraging them and not allowing them to take a lesser route. Because I certainly wouldn't have pursued education if it wasn't for my parents doing that.
MashaAllah. Sister Sophia, what about your feelings in relation to, you talked about your mother, but really how important and how significant is her factor in, or your parents in education and informing you and making sure you stay the course?
Oh, wow. I believe, like Sister Nora said, my mom is like a family joke. I mean, she would drive me all the way from Detroit, all the way to Farmington Hills for 4 years, so I could go to a college prep high school with all girls, and pay oodles of tuition money every year so I could go there and not, I guess maybe she was trying to protect me from the inner city schools, kind of like it is today. If a parent can afford it or would be willing to sacrifice, like my mother sacrificed her school teaching money so I could go and be with the suburban white girls, basically. It wasn't a lot of black girls out there. It's like tokens. We're all the way out in Farmington Hills, and rain, snow, sleet, everything. She drove me out there every day, picked me up every day. And then once I finished high school, she got me into a summer program that bridged you into Michigan State. So the summer before I started college, I was in school again. So it was definitely promoted on behalf of my mother, probably because she was independent and she figured, if I'm struggling to provide for this child, I want her to be able to provide for herself in the event that she has to. So she kept me in school. And then once I went to college, I just stayed in school and kept pursuing different educational fields. But what that has done is diversified my experience. I didn't mention it earlier, but I did work at General Motors for quite some time. And I was servicing the executives. It was like an elite position at General Motors where I was working. And I had all this, I didn't have anything to do with really technical fields like Sister Nura, but there I was at General Motors. So it's pretty much you use your education and shape it and package it the way that you want to based upon the career that you want to be into. You know, you pretty much, it's like marketing yourself in the interview to the people. And I thank my mother, alhamdulillah, for our mothers, mother, to encourage me to stay in school. So it's a really heavy influence. And I know you had mentioned earlier this morning about in other communities how education is a big, heavy familial influence. And alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. Sister Nora, I know we had the real influence of your father, and you said pushing in education. Give us more of that influence on you, and how did it shape you as a person and as a son someone who's pursuing, and even up now into your professional career? What do you sometimes reflect back? I know, like, sometimes I think even today, I go back 30 years and I think of some of my teachers, some of the influence that they had on me, you know, still to this day. And I would even sometimes emulate them in the way I speak, right? Because of that profound impact they had on my life. Far as your family, your parents, could you give us some more insight into that?
I'm learning to unmute. That's a really good question. And actually, my answer to that, I want to start with my father, and I'll finish out with my mom, because I'm going to give my mother more credit here. So as far as my father and shaping me, wanting to continue to pursue a higher education, I think the most important thing to say is that probably to this day, my father is the smartest man that I've ever known. And I don't just say that because he's my father, but he was a master at language. He spoke over 8 languages, probably more than that, but he didn't want to claim some other languages because he hadn't mastered them, okay? So he was fluent in 8 languages. And of course, he was educated. He had all the way up to his advanced degree. And so for me, that was my role model to emulate in terms of pursuing an education. But in terms of my mother, I think probably was a bigger influence because my mother didn't have a lot of formal education. But again, my mother is probably one of the smartest women that I've ever known. My mother just read. What brings to mind when I think about my mother, I think about Malcolm X. My mother was self-educated, okay? She started from humble beginnings. She was brought up in the projects, and that's what really inspired me. You know, the fact that she didn't come from a lot, but she was such, you know, an avid reader. So I learned how to read probably when I was about 4 years old, definitely well before I started school, just reading my mother's books. She had so many books on different subjects. And that was my first library, was my mother's, you know, books and her bookshelf. And I have lots more books than my mother now, but, you know, we had a library in our home, and a lot of those books was my mother's books. And that's how I got introduced to literature. And my parents were very strict about having us learn to think for ourselves. So my father would always find a way to weave a lesson into that, you know, the importance of learning how to critically think. And I think that's the point that we probably need to touch on. We're talking about higher education, right? And people think, oh, you get a degree and that doesn't mean you'll get a job, right? But really, the purpose of an education is to teach you how to think. It's not to emulate somebody else's thought process, but you have to learn how to take the material in and process it and learn how to think for yourself. So I think that's one of the biggest objectives of getting an education. And then, of course, you want to be able to be productive. You want to be able to contribute to society in a meaningful way. But yeah, I think I'll end with that. But yeah, my parents my household, was a lot of debate that went on in the household. My parents used big vocabulary. We got teased a lot because of the way that we spoke. I was brought up in East Orange, New Jersey, actually. I didn't come to Michigan until I was almost an adult. So when I got to Michigan, I think I had the Jersey accent, and then the fact that, we spoke very proper. So I was teased a lot for that. But yeah, definitely my parents they set a very high bar for us, myself and my other 6 siblings.
MashaAllah. Later on, when we get to know each other better, I'll tell you some East Orange jokes. Alhamdulillah, I'll take that. Funny that you mentioned critical thinking. One of our students, and he's like a son to me, he just this month graduated from Al-Azhar University in Cairo, Egypt. And yesterday, time flies, last night we were driving and we were having a very deep conversation about world matters and scholarship and all of these things. And, he has a teacher from the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who I met that scholar when I went to visit him in Egypt. And he's very strong scholar. And I said to him, so it's like almost every opinion was the opinion of that sheikh. I said, you went to school, you graduated. It's time for you to start thinking yourself. You have to be critically thinking of all things, not repeating, actually being able to assess and evaluate the opinion of the ulama, the scholars, and then from that opinion, come to a conclusion. Don't tell me qala shaykhi. Don't just tell me my sheikh said. I want to know how you understood what your sheikh said. But that was a dig. He's probably listening, so that was just for him. Right? So thank you. That is my son, Waladi, barakallahu fi. May Allah reward him and his parents who set him on that path, and he continued, and he's on his way to his masters, inshallah. Question, so please make dua for him. Inshallah, he's going to take my place, inshallah. Let me rephrase this. How is it that your education now has benefited you in your present life? Because a lot of times youth may be listening, people listen, they say, okay, I went through all this education, I'm learning, now what? So how does it benefit you in your present life? I'll go to Sister Sophia first, then to Sister Nora, then to Sister Noradine.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Education is kind of adding to what I said earlier. It's made job pursuing easier, less stressful, because once you get to a certain point and you got experience on top of your education, your resume is just shouts out on its own, So basically during this pandemic, I've been home collecting unemployment, not worrying about really when am I going to get my job. I already have the job that I had waiting for me. They're calling me every week, updating me, what schools, because I was subbing at the time. I just did an interview the other day. So it's just the education has made my life less stressful as far as worrying whether I can get a job or not. No matter how bad the economy gets. Well, first of all, we know it's because of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the reason why we're able to get what we get. If he wants us to get it, we'll get it. But alhamdulillah, because of my education, I'm able, it just opens opportunities. And it's not limited to education. So the interview that I had, I was like yesterday, is for a reading tutor. And because everything is online, I just stay home and assist like 5 kids a day with their reading. And if they need help, I'll get additional hours after school and helping them with their homework. And then that doesn't conflict with what I need to do with my children who are going to be at home. And that was a huge stressor for parents this summer. Like, what are we going to do? What are you going to do if you have to go to work and then your kids are you going to be home? I mean, if you got some kids are online and some kids are at school, so education has definitely made this, especially during this pandemic, easier for me. And in general, when you first start out, it's kind of bumpy because it's like, well, yeah, you have these degrees, but you don't have any experience. It's like, well, how do I get the experience if I don't get a job? So it's like that gap. It's like, okay, you got to hire me so I can get the experience and then we can go from there. So alhamdulillah, it all worked out.
Barakallahu feek. Sister Nora.
Okay, the question again was, how does my education benefit me in my current life? Is that
Yes.
the question? Okay, that's a good question. So let me start with number one. I love to travel. Working as a manufacturing engineer, I've lived in many different states around the country. Lived in the States as well as commuted back and forth from where I live to the location. So I've traveled around the country, traveled outside of the country. I'm currently working on a project right now that will eventually end up in Mexico. So, that's probably the biggest component for me because I love to travel. So it's opened up the world to me, really, and allowed me to be able to live around, different places around the country. More recently, I was in California for a few years. And then after that, I was in Indiana for about 4 years. I'm in Michigan now. So I get around a lot. The second piece, I think, in how education has benefited me is that, of course, we know an engineer at a senior level. I won't get into what my salary is. I'll just say that I'm able to earn a comfortable salary like, any other engineering senior level professional. So that's good too, but that's not, a lot of people probably would think that's the best thing or the biggest thing, but that's not the best thing. For me, I love, love, love what I do. And I consider it such a blessing that I get paid to do it. Like I would do this without getting paid. That's how much I love my job. I set my own schedule. I get to do so many different things. I have a lot of say over my project, if you will. I did a stint for about 4 years where I managed a team of senior level engineers. So I've gotten a lot of leadership experience. Pretty much I've been able to do many things that are traditionally closed to minorities and especially Black women. So I would say those are the top things. And, then probably the other piece, I like the fact that I'm able to help my family out. And I like the fact that I'm able to now contribute and do things for the masjid. So it's just that, to me, that's the benefit of the money, being able to help other people. But for me personally, the traveling and just being able to set my own schedule and having that creative freedom in my job, that's priceless. So I'll close with that.
Sister Noordine, inshallah.
So, alhamdulillah, I think in my present life, it has, for me, it's kind of more recently coming together because I kind of, once I graduated, I went the route of Islamic studies. So, alhamdulillah, I feel like now I'm at a point where I'm trying to, in a sense, combine the two to, so whether I'm lecturing or writing, to try to introduce some of these psychology topics and understandings and perspectives to the Muslim community, those that are in line with our faith and there isn't any incongruence. And then also being able to speak on issues that I think if I only had an Islamic perspective, it would be more limited in terms of, as one of the sisters mentioned, opportunities. So I've spoken, I guess this maybe a year or two now, alhamdulillah, I was able to speak at the UN about the transgender issue. And I think if I was only coming from a Muslim perspective, they wouldn't be interested in what I had to say. But the fact that I also have a academic secular background, then there's a level of respect and authority that you're going to have in non-Muslim spaces. And I think that's really valuable for us as Muslims. If you only have that Islamic knowledge, alhamdulillah, you're the sheikh in your community. And that's, of course, that is really crucial and beneficial. But in terms of impacting larger society, I think that degree says a lot to those outside of our faith. So I would say, alhamdulillah, those are some of the major things that I'm still benefiting from now.
A quick few questions. Number one, let me, where is it? I saw a question. Okay. My daughter's there, so I'm going to let her question go through, right? Because this is inspiring to her. So she said, as a young Muslimah community, as a young Muslim in the community, how do we stay focused in pursuing education? Besides having a mom and dad who are going to wring my neck if I don't do it. Sister Noor, I'll let you take it first, inshallah.
Okay, I'll take that one. First of all, the question is how as a young Muslima, how do I stay focused on pursuing my education? And I'm imagining she means with everything that goes on in life and, all the stress and everything. I feel that first, there has to be a ground, firm Islamic foundation. That's all success is from Allah. So that's something to understand. You can't be successful without having the deen. So you have to, follow the obligations, making all of your prayers. You're going to need that for strength and for fortitude. So that's number one. And then number two, advice that I want to give is that it's not going to be easy. Even if you choose to go into something that's not necessarily known for having a lot of difficult classes and, it's still not going to be easy. And you're going to have your
Something froze. Inshallah, Sister Nora, if you can log back out. Oh, let me see. Oh, this should go. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. So I don't know what part I left off on, but I wanted to make sure that I get this across, is that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. As an African American Muslim woman, it's going to be even more difficult for you. You're going to have to do more than your counterparts of other ethnicities. It's not fair, but that's the way it is. You have to be exceptional. You can't just be average. A C is not good enough. You need an A. If you don't get the A, you have to go back and figure out what you need to do to get that A. So for me, I'm speaking coming from a STEM background, competing with other people in taking mathematics, calculus, physics, all of these difficult classes, right? So for me, I always realized from the beginning that I have to be better than other people. And I know it's not fair, but that's just the way it is. If other people have finished studying and got their studying done in 4 hours, then you need to be putting in 6 or 7 hours. You need to be doing more. If somebody has an A, you need to make sure you get extra credit. So you have to do that from the beginning, right? And I feel that having a strong foundation in the dean will be able to get you through that, or at least it definitely helped me and got me through. There was many days that, you know, it was just me and Allah. I lost a lot of sleep pursuing my degree. And then one other thing I want to say that people. Okay, so let me share this and then I'll finish. This is the last thing I want to share. It took me 9 years to get my undergrad in manufacturing engineering. So think about that. That's almost a decade that I spent as a student studying. When I graduated with that undergrad degree and got my first job, guess what? I started out as entry level, almost a decade of studying. And I started out in the field at entry level. So when I tell you that you have to put in work, that's an understatement. I'm now at the senior level, so you can just imagine and think about what's taking place in between there. But
Inshallah, she'll come back. Maybe some technical differences from her internet reception. So, Sister Noordine, inshallah, I'll have a question for you.
Okay.
Unless you want to tag in on that question as well. But the other one is, where is it at? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. How have you been able to utilize your secular education to help your Islamic community? And how do you manage the two, and how have you been successful in that?
Okay. So the first short answer I want to give to the last question is something that Sheikh Amin would always say every time we went to class back when he taught in Manhattan, was to correct your intention. So if you have an intention that is beyond you, that is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of your community, it makes it a bit easier to continue on. I mean, alhamdulillah, all of us on the panel, we also had our parents, so that helps a lot. But if you don't have that, or even if you do, having that higher intention makes it easier. It makes it so that even when it's difficult, you still say, okay, but I'm doing this so that I can benefit my community. Then it's a lot easier, inshallah ta'ala. So alhamdulillah, right now, besides for lecturing and all that, lecturing and writing, which is important to me, and however minor it is, I think is a part of bringing, inshallah ta'ala, some benefit to the community. I also have an initiative called Noor Ash-Shadali, where we are teaching some of these secular topics, so to speak, from a faith-based perspective. So one of my goals, one of my intentions, and something that I really benefited from when I was in Jordan and got to sit in on the classes of Sheikh Nu, was the way that he was able to interweave secular knowledge and Islamic knowledge in a way that I thought was really beneficial. And I feel that in a secular society, we need to understand the society that we're in. We need to understand the subjects that are important to understand in the society, but we have to do so in a way that allows us to keep our faith. So if we are grounded in our faith and we're learning with other people who are believers, but we're learning about Freud and we're learning about Erickson, just some important figures in psychology, then we can do both. We can understand society, understand these varying perspectives. Sometimes in learning about psychology, you understand, oh, this is why society is like this, because some crucial ideas were put forward that people accepted and spread. And so if I can tackle and understand those ideas first for my own self so that I can navigate this society, then maybe it also helps, whether it's with dawah or with keeping your own children or yourself, you know, in the deen. So that has really been crucial for me. And also utilizing the tools of psychology that I feel are beneficial for ourselves as Muslims, whether that's for personal development or wellness, any sort of research-based method that can benefit us as believers, as long as it doesn't contradict our religion, then that's really beneficial as well. So for me, I would say I'm more so starting out on that pathway, but that is, inshallah ta'ala, what we're working on and what our goals are.
Sister Sophia, I'm going to give you the opportunity to also chime in on the previous questions, but the specific one I have from you for you is this. One of the questions was, do you believe non-degreed educated women have a significant role in reshaping the woman of our ummah? Does their influence merit the same amount of respect as a woman who holds a degree?
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, I'll answer the second question first. Alhamdulillah, yes, I definitely believe that non-degree women have a lot to add value to our communities. There are skill sets that the educational realm has not seen. I mean, we have cooks, we have sewers, we have artists, we have some of us are just natural nurturers. I mean, while we're at work, we prefer to have Muslim women to watch after our children, as opposed to go to the established daycare centers. You know, you want to feel like family is watching your children where you have to go to work. There's a slew of skill sets that go untapped, and you don't have to go to school to be fabulous and really great at what you do. So, no, we should always welcome the talents and skills from everyone. Education is just one avenue, and it's just one avenue. That's just what it is. And everybody's not tracked to go to school. School is not the only way to be successful. So as far as the first question, as far as what I've done to use my secular education in the Islamic community, I did teach at a couple of Islamic schools. I was at El-Ikhlas Training Academy with Imam Nadir Ahmed for a couple, 2 or 3 years, and then I was at Academy of International Studies. It's a private school, but it's like 95% Muslim. So I just felt like I was at a Muslim school, and I had an awesome experience there as well. I've done some home tutoring with Muslims who were preparing for ACT or SAT examinations. Wali Muhammad has been a couple of summers, did summer program where I was one of the teachers on their staff there. So yes, and now miscellaneous projects, I volunteer, I try to let people know what I can do, volunteer, and just assist us. A lot of our masters are up and coming and establishing ourselves. So we're still getting to know one another. So I just try to volunteer skill sets. I do editing. I've done presentations and whatnot. So definitely all women, Muslimas, Allah made us great. So we should always know that education is not the only way to participate in the Islamic communities. Alhamdulillah.
Inshallah, I'm going to, it's Maghrib time for me here, so I'm going to turn over to Sister Nordine, who's very good at managing these things. So it's your turn, Sheikha. I'll be back, inshallah, and then you can go. Barakallahu fiki.
Okay, Bismillah. So, alhamdulillah, thank you all for those questions so far. Inshallah ta'ala, I want to see if there are any other questions or comments. So, inshallah, if you all can send in any other questions you have, I want to ask you sisters, maybe Sister Nora, on that same theme. Do you feel like it's more so a matter of having an expertise or a skill set over a particular degree, or do you feel like there's something beneficial about getting a degree in particular that Muslim women should pursue?
So let me make sure I understand your question. Are you saying, do I think that that Muslim women can still be of benefit even if they don't pursue a degree, or
So I guess sort of a
do I
I think
think
that
that
was the question that was asked earlier. So that, and then maybe just as an extension of that question, would you advise a young Muslim woman that it's okay to just get a particular skill set in something, or do you think there's something in particular that's beneficial about a degree?
I okay, let me answer that from this perspective. I don't think that we should be clones of other people, first of all. We have to know what we want to do, what's going to fulfill us and make us happy and bring meaning into our life, right? So, for example, say someone wants to be a doctor. Obviously, you have to have a degree to be a doctor. But say someone is a very good seamstress and they like to sew and they like to design clothes, so on and so forth. You don't necessarily have to go the traditional education route to make a good living as a seamstress. My mother was actually a seamstress. And I myself have skills outside of being an engineer. I like to crochet, I make things. So I'm somewhat of an artist in that arena. So I don't think there's one way which is the best way. And if you don't do it that way, you're not doing it right. Okay, so let me just get that. I don't buy into that. I don't buy into the argument that we hear a lot where there's educated women versus non-educated women. I think that we can all be brilliant in our respective, whatever our purpose is and whatever we're doing, we can be great in that. For me, I wanted to be an engineer, so I needed an education to be able to be an engineer. Just like if a doctor, wants to be a doctor, they're not going to let you practice medicine, without having a degree. And I don't think you would go and buy a car that somebody without having years of training and experience designed, right? That's a safety, right? So you want people that want to go into engineering. You want us to pursue that education and be degree. You want to know that your vehicle is safe. So I think to answer your question, I don't want to babble, but I think it depends on what you want to do and what makes you happy. If you are like to design clothes, if you like to cook and you want to open a restaurant, be great and do that. Who says that there's anything wrong with it? And by the way, my mother was what I guess we would call a housewife. All right. My father worked and my mother stayed home with us. And I think there's great honor in that because I am who I am because of my mother. So I guess that's all I have to say to that part. I didn't catch what your other question was.
No, alhamdulillah, that was excellent. I think maybe, inshallah, a question for both of you, but I'll begin with Sophia. You mentioned that a part of getting an education was about being independent and being possibly able to take care of yourself if need be. I think that's kind of a common sentiment given to Black women in particular. Do you think that is a good reason to pursue education? Because some might say, well, isn't that kind of a fear tactic? Like, should we be afraid that we won't be taken care of as women, especially as Muslim women? Or do you think that's just a part of the reality and it's a necessary concern in pursuing education, or necessary reason, motivation to pursue education?
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Yes. Oh, wow. That's a really Awesome question. Well, I can say for myself personally, and just seeing my mother, pretty much she ran the whole house and did everything on her own. And the reality for a lot of Black women is that, yes, we are single. So what better way to have a backup plan is but to have a sheet of paper. I mean, this is how America runs, on documents. And so if you can show or prove, unfortunately, prove your value on paper, what can you do? You know, what are your credentials? Then that's a verified backup plan. Okay, so yeah, it can be scary, but it's also, we know as Muslims that whatever we're going to get is by the will of Allah. So we can plan, you know, my mother planned and said, okay, I want my daughter to be okay in the event that she has to take care of herself. So that worked. But here I am single, and I am having to take care of myself. So, alhamdulillah, this is written and I accept it. You know, when Allah wills, something may change. But until then, because I have these degrees, and like we said in the previous question, it's not the degree, it can be a skill set. If you have a skill set and you can market yourself in the fashion industry or whatever you do as your strength, and you need to provide for yourself, then with Allah's will, you will make it. It's not the degree that makes you. It's not the degree. So this just happens to be my particular path in my family line. My grandmother wasn't educated, so it started with my mother. So she changed the tradition, and so I'm trying to do that with my children. But again, the story is different. I have boys. So in America, for Black boys, that whole scenario is changing. It's very dynamic as we speak, and it is scary. So am I going to promote education as a backup plan? I don't know. I think it would be best to maybe do skill set, because when we put our boys in the traditional schools, they miss out. I've changed their schools, my son's schools, trying to make sure they get something of the caliber of education that I got. There's always something missing, huge misses. So I'm thankful again that I'm an educator, so I can at home try to fill in those gaps and try to inspire them. Because, you know, like you said, when you're younger, you don't really understand the importance of getting good grades. You know, so you're all, as mothers, we're always teaching. We always have that hat on, you know. So I would say everyone has their own backup plan, and it's not just education, but we do need to know how to take care of ourselves with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, because the odds are, for some of us, is stacked against us. Alhamdulillah.
So I want to ask you before going to Nora. So it's interesting because I think in our community, and you can let me know if you have the same perception, then women are taught, you know, get an education, as you said, so that just in case, you know, you don't have someone to take care of you, you can take care of yourself. But are we teaching men, or should we be teaching young men, get an education so you can take care of a family? Is that being taught in our community, and should it be? First, Sophia first, and then Nora, inshallah.
Oh, you're saying, should we promote education for our children?
I guess for girls specifically, then there's the idea that get your education just in case so that you'll be able to take care of yourself. So are we teaching young men, make sure to get your education or a skill set so that you can take care of a family? And if not, then should we be teaching that to young men particularly?
Yes, I believe we should be teaching our young men, young boys to hold responsibility, to be able to lead a household. And the first place to start would be to give them responsibilities in the communities that they exist in. They have to be in leadership roles from very small. And we can learn from other communities that have had success with this, you know, and not just Quran, just everyday skill sets. I think sometimes because we think it's the masjid, it's like, oh, okay, I want my children to recite Quran, call the adhan, go to classes, and you know, children are, if that's all that they're doing, they're not going to keep interest. They're not going to stay interested in it. So, you know, we're competing with the technology. So if it's not flashy and fast and fun, they're not interested. They want Fortnite. And I'm so frustrated with Fortnite. You know, they're upstairs playing Fortnite, and I shut it down after a certain time. You know, and you know, I might be the mean old mom, but sorry, no more Fortnite. It's got to go off. It's finished. So yes, inshallah, we're looking. It's coming up where the male individuals will be, you know, mentoring and guiding our children, and Muslimas to guide the sisters, because it's got to be above and beyond Quran. Not of course, that's first and foremost, but you know, I guess that's where the secular knowledge comes in. We have to complement. We have to supplement and complement, diversify, and make it so that the masjid and home life really isn't that much separate. It should be kind of like all in one, you know, because we don't want to bore them. Inshallah.
Alhamdulillah, thank you for your answer. That
Assalamu alaikum,
was
Sister Nordine. You want to take?
that means back.
No, go ahead. Ask your question, then you can take your break to pray.
Okay, inshallah. So the question I wanted to ask for Nora, if you had any commentary on that, but also this idea that, you know, education, as we mentioned just now, it's taught as a backup plan for Black women. But we do, I don't know the exact stat, but we know that Black women as a group, we're in a lot of debt also. So what is your sort of commentary on that, about the debt that we take on? And is it worth it in light of that? If someone is telling you, and I've had younger people ask me, and it's a difficult question for me to answer, if someone's saying, hey, I don't want to get into thousands of dollars of debt. I just don't think it's worth it. I don't want to pay off debt for the next 20 years of my life. Do you think that it's worth it to take on that debt? That would sort of be the first question. And then the second question I want to ask you about is ethnic differences. We see, for example, in the South Asian community, they're essentially taught, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer. There are a few, you know, choice careers that all make good money. And while some of them may see that as restrictive, it benefits them, right? Because they become a wealthy community. So do you think that in our community, maybe we should start taking that more direct approach of telling our children, the next generation, study this, study that, so that you can make some good money?
Two very excellent and important questions. And I'll take the first one on, do I think the debt is worth it? I'm not sure if everybody can still hear me.
No,
Are
we
we
can hear
starting
you.
to
Go
go
ahead.
out
You're
again?
clear.
Okay. Okay. So do I think the debt is worth it? And this is what I would say. If somebody were just getting ready to enter college and they didn't have money to pay for college, and they asked me that question, so I'm going to answer it as if I'm answering it to somebody that's in that situation that's getting ready to go to college right now, because I think that's where it has the most benefit. So number one, you have tools at your disposal. Before you take on anything, especially something as big as an education, before you take on something that big, you need to do your homework and your research. You should know exactly how much money you're going to make with whatever field you choose to go into. You should also know what the projection is for the next, let's just say, 10 to 20 years in that field, right? Is it going to be a field that's in high demand, or is it declining? These are the type of questions that you need to ask when you do your research. So that, and also I would say, you need to ask yourself and be honest, what type of lifestyle are you looking to lead? Because if you're not a materialistic person, you don't care necessarily about money, you'll be happy, on a meager salary, then you're just going to go into something and do exactly what you want to do, and you're not going to worry about the money. So from that standpoint, it may not be a good idea for you to go and take on thousands of dollars in debt, right? Pursuing a higher education. I'm just being honest, right? So if you're going to go into something that is not going to pay a lot of money when you get out and you go into the field, how are you going to be able to pay back all of those loans? Now, let's get down to what I tell my kids. I push STEM, which is short for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Just like you said that the immigrants, they push STEM with their kids. Okay, I push STEM with my kids because why not? Number one, it's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. If you're going to go to school and take on thousands of dollars in student loans and you get a STEM degree, it is absolutely worth it because you're going to make so much money that you're not going to be in debt for 10 years. You'll probably be able to pay it off in a few years. And Allah knows best, but I'm going to tell you that if you go into STEM, if you get an engineering degree, you're going to make a lot of money. Whatever you have to pay back in student loans is going to be menial if you're walking around with a master's in engineering. Anybody that has a master's in engineering, I know is going to back me up on this. So it depends on what you go into. I guess that's the way you answer that. I push STEM with my kids. So if you're going into a STEM field, if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a nurse, nurses make a tons of money when they go back and get their advanced degrees. You wouldn't believe. So depending on what you're going to go into, yes, it is worth it to take on the debt. And I know a lot of people probably would disagree with me, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I have no regrets. The other question, I think that answers that, right? If you're going to go into a field where you're not going to make a lot of money and you're faced with, should I take on all this student debt? I would say it's not worth it. I'm be honest. I would say it's not worth it. I would get a trade. It would be better to go into a trade where you don't have to take on all of that debt. I made good money braiding hair before I got my engineering degree, but that's another story. I have so many different hustles. But the other question that you asked was, do I think that we should be pushing STEM in the African American community, just like the immigrant communities push? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. I'm tired of being the only person in these positions of African American, ethnicity. And when I look around, I see my counterparts of Palestinians and other ethnicities where women and men are showing up in much bigger numbers than us. If you want to just talk in terms of Muslim, I'm it. Okay. I found another Muslim sister and I almost lost it. I ran into her at my job at the Starbucks. I almost lost it because I had been working here and hadn't seen any, Muslims. And this was, by the way, she was an African immigrant. So she wasn't an African American, but alhamdulillah, she had a hijab on and she was a Muslim and I was ecstatic. Okay. Yes, We should push it. And I think that not all of our kids, realistically, let's be honest, not all of our kids are going to want to go into a STEM field, but many of them will. Many of them will want to do it. And if you encourage your child to start when they're young enough, this is something that they're going to automatically do. Just like, my father pushed that when I was probably 4 years old. I didn't choose to go to college. My father had already decided my kids are going to be college educated. That was never a debate or a question in my household. So I absolutely think we need to be pushing that, because that money that these future doctors, scientists, engineers, and what have you, that money is going to come right back into the African American Muslim community. If they don't go into the fields, they're not going to have the money to bring back into the community. You can't build a community off of, a little bit of money. You need money. That's the reality. You need money to build. So yeah, we should be pushing that. And I'll close with that.
MashaAllah. May Allah reward you. That is a very important aspect. I think sometimes we in our communities, in African American communities, I have a concept. Whatever is ailing the Black community is the same thing that's ailing the Black Muslim community. There's no difference. We're all suffering from the same thing. So I think that is an important conversation that we need to really flush out. Like, how do we educate ourselves for future empowerment? I think that's extremely important. With that said, it's the second hour and we have 45 minutes left. And this is where the conversation gets a little bit spicy. So get ready. Like, this is how it works. So one raise, I saw it. I don't know if y'all addressed it, but I'm going to go. It's one of the things I don't like to leave difficult discussions off the table, because we need to have them, because it's an overall growth. One was, where did I saw it? Allah. Why are most, and I don't know if most is the word to use, but why are most or many or too many educated Muslims single? Who would like to take that? Sister Sophia, Sister Noor, y'all both may have different answers to that, so I'll go to Sister Sophia first.
Assalamu alaikum. The question is, why are most professional Black women single?
Yeah, they said educated, and I just tweaked it by saying most or many or too many. So I just added, but the question was, why are most educated Muslims single?
Wow, this is so loaded.
There
I don't want to say the
wrong thing. Only truth. Right? Speak the truth. One positive thing about being African Americans, if you don't tackle your issues, nobody else will. So this is your chance.
Right.
Go for it.
Well, I guess, when you're looking for a lifetime mate, you want someone that you can relate to or communicate with. And as far as the marriage situation in the Islamic community, we've been pretty much in crisis mode as far as being able to find mates, because I think this is about education and talking about educating our boys, and we know that the system is against our boys. So how do we expect to be able to find a mate if the systems that we're putting our children in are not don't want to educate them? So we're getting educated, but our counterparts are not. And that doesn't mean we're not saying it's their fault. It's the system is not geared to educate them. It's designed to oppress them and assist the women. So it's off balance. So it's time to get married, and you look around and who's there to get married? And so you get married because Islam is half of your deen, and you want to fulfill that portion, and you find out, wow, this is not the one. So many times, and well, in my case, I'm divorced. No one wants to be divorced, but basically, a lot of, I don't know if anybody gathered it, but I'm pretty much was a sheltered Catholic girl. I came up in a Catholic all-girls school. So what are the odds that I'll find someone that has been educated all the way from actually even in grade school, I was in a Catholic school all the way up to university level. Where's my counterpart? So you give it a try, and sometimes it doesn't work out. But then in retrospect, you ponder and you say, wow, there's not really that many opportunities if the men are in a daily, constant, all the time struggle. They're in a struggle. So they're trying to survive, and then we're forced to survive because there's no one available, whether it's incarceration, whether it's drugs, whether it's they gay, whether they just gigolos, those aren't viable options. So a lot of sisters just decide, well, what I decided, I'm just going to wait on Allah. So whatever Allah says it, then that's when I say, okay. And other than that, I'm going to take myself out of it. I'm taking myself out, and, I'm muddying up the waters by trying to choose. And I would say, Allah, you choose, not just wait. Because, there's only so much that the heart can take, and society is telling us Black women are the least desirable women. We may know that that's not true, but society is saying, I get the white women, the foreign women, African, everybody is above, and then the Black women. And so now we got Kamala, and she going to be maybe the vice president. So maybe that'll give us some notches up. I don't know. So I'll let the other sisters answer. I hope I didn't ramble too much.
Sister Nora, inshallah, you can take on that question if you feel comfortable.
I won't shy away from it.
My
Not at all. So the question, why are there so many single, educated African-American Muslim women? I'm going to answer that from two different sides. So first, I'm going to answer it from the perspective of, I'm just going to keep it real. For the most part, African-American Muslim men do not value an African-American Muslim woman that has a higher education. I'm not saying all of them don't. So I know Imam Naeem loves to say the not audience. I don't know if he'll watch this later, but yeah, I'm not talking to the not audience. I know that there are some good brothers out there that love, and would love to have an educated African-American Muslim woman, but obviously it's not in high numbers, right? They're not necessarily going for the woman. And part of that is, let's be honest, I don't know if anybody's ever watched the show Martin, but I'll throw a little bit of pop culture, a little bit of culture in there. So on the Martin show, they had an episode where Martin found out Gina made more than him, and he acted just a complete fool. I won't get into any more detail, but if you saw the episode, it was hilarious. But the reason why it was so funny is because of some truth to that. A lot of men can't handle a woman that makes more money than them. That's another one. I'm sure that there's going to be people coming after me for this one, but alhamdulillah, I have to be honest and keep it real. I'm not going to lie on here. What I see is that it's definitely a problem for some men that their woman makes more money than them. That's part of it. Like I said, the other part of it is, I think, is that not enough African American Muslim men value an educated African American Muslim woman. So, and by that I mean that they don't recognize the value. They don't it doesn't mean that we don't have value. Obviously, we have value. They don't recognize it, and it's sad because they lose out. And it's what makes it even more ironic is that every other ethnicity, whether it's white, whether it's Palestinian, Arab, every other ethnicity recognizes the value in an African American educated woman, more so than African American women, men. And that's just so ironic to me. It's like everybody else can see that your woman has value, but you can't. Okay. So those are the two tough ones that I know people are going to come for me on those, but I'm keeping it real. Okay, so let me switch over to the other side. The other side of this is from a perspective of a woman, right? Because it's never one-sided. It's always more than one side to the story. And this is what I see. I'm going to use my sister as an example. Hopefully they won't be mad about this if they see this later, my sister and my brother-in-law, but I think it's a beautiful story. So when my sister met my brother-in-law, you know, he worked with his dad, and his dad owned a very meager fruit, you know, neighborhood store. He sold fruit basically. And he had a little neighborhood store, and then he would go to the Eastern Market and sell fruit. So he grew up like that. That's where he was working. When they got married, he had another meager job working as a messenger for another company, right? So he wasn't making the six figures or even 50,000, right? He wasn't making a lot of money. So a lot of women would have passed him up and turned him down. They wouldn't have even looked at him as a potential husband. But something that I love my sister for, because she taught me this, right? This is my big sister. She's got me by 5 years. Is my sister looked at that man that was making that meager salary, and guess what? He was in school to be an engineer. He was going to Wayne State at the time. He was going to Wayne State to get his engineering degree in mechanical engineering. And my sister looked at that and she said, you know, one day he's going to graduate. He's going to make more money. This is a good husband. She didn't look at him and say, this man is broke. She looked at him and she saw the potential. So, you know, just to speed it up, I don't want to go on and on, but the end of that story was he graduated from engineering school with a degree in mechanical engineering. He went on to get his master's in engineering. I was right behind him. He got his master's before me. And, you know, he's making the engineering salary. You can go on Google and see how much engineers make. So he's making the comfortable engineering salary, and she's living in the big house. So, you know, I know this seems a little tough on women, but I do see some women that don't understand how to look at a man and see the potential. I think the problem is that some brothers want to push that and say, oh, women, you know, they want a man that makes a lot of money and they're not willing to build with the man. I hear this a lot from brothers. They're not willing to build with the man. And that's not true. They are willing to build with the man. But if you come to the table and you don't even have any plans, like you don't have anything to tell me, you don't have anything written down, like I can't see how you're going to be able to take care of me in 3, 4, 5 years from now, then you're not looking for a woman to build with you. You're looking for a woman to carry you. And quite frankly, many of us are not down for that. Why should I put in all this work and you just want to come along for the ride and benefit? A man should be able to put in just as much work as me, if not more. And I put in work. So I'm expecting that you're going to be able to match me with that. You don't have to do exactly what I'm doing, but you can't expect to just come and be carried. That's a complete turnoff, I think, to a lot of women. It's just not a masculine, you know, quality that makes a woman feel warm and fuzzy. I know people are going to come for me, but I'm keeping it real. You have to be able to show me that I can inspire you to do something. Give me something to work with, and I guarantee you, I'll give you all the encouragement and inspiration you need, just like my sister did. She cheered my brother-in-law on to the finish line to get his degree. And when he got his degree, he said, this is our degree, because he recognized, okay, the value that she brought to that. So I think I've said enough. I've given a little bit on both sides. I don't want anybody to come for me, so I'm going to leave it there.
I hope y'all reading the comments. These guys are crazy. Noah Cross, will you marry me? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Oh, Sister Noordine, you want to take that question? La ilaha illallah, our people. Go ahead.
About why educated women seem to be less married in the Black community.
That was the question, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know what the stats are in terms of when Black women are more educated, if we're less married. The reality is that Black women overall are not married, and that obviously also means that Black men are not marrying Black women or really anyone else in their marriageable years. So I don't know that it's a particularly educated woman problem. 70% of Black women in their 20s, 30s, I'm not sure about 40s, but in those childbearing years especially are not married. So it's kind of a general issue with Black men generally not getting married. In the Muslim community, I don't know the stats in particular, but we know that's true for the African American community. The only other thing I would say when it comes to education is that I don't think that having a secular education is a prerequisite for being a good or suitable wife. I would even almost say or husband, except for the fact that for men, having a skill set, which would include a degree, shows that you can be a good provider. So it's a bit more meaningful for men. Whereas for women, I think the only reason that would even sort of be up for discussion when it comes to getting married would be in terms of suitability. So a man with an education probably wants a woman with an education. And maybe that's where the problem lies, is that a lot of Black men don't have an education. So if he doesn't have an undergraduate degree or a graduate degree or a PhD, then he isn't even really suitable for a woman who has that level of education. So I don't know. Those are the couple of things that come to mind.
I want to ask a question to you, because there is another side of this coin that in the pursuit of secular knowledge, then there is sometimes the sacrifice, sometimes, not in every case, of Islamic knowledge. So how do you balance the two between your secular pursuits and your Islamic education as well?
Assalamu alaikum. Well, the timing of our Islam is up to Allah. So in my case, while I was pursuing my education, I was not Muslim, so it was towards the latter end of my college. And then I really didn't immerse myself into a community until I had come home with my third degree. So that being said, I mean, and I'm not my focus was not to have a lot of money, a lot of women like big houses. I think at one point I was like, oh, I want a big house. But as you change, over the years you change, and it's not important to me to have a big house. Main thing is safety, security. Most people want a companion, and you need to be compatible and whatnot. So right now in my life, Islam is like the center, is everything. So going to classes, learning Quran, learning Arabic, helping my children, Islam is like the center of everything. And it wasn't like that before. So to balance it right now, it's just like, okay, having a job is like secondary. I need a job, but I don't want it to conflict with my Islam, So if you are Muslim, and I'm not first Muslim in my family. So we do have a lot of Muslims like that as well in the Black community, that they're first generation. So I'm like carrying the torch, trying to pass it on to my children single-handedly. You know, I don't have support from anywhere. And I mean, anywhere. It's just me. So that is my focus. So what I'm trying to say is maybe I'm out of balance because Islam is everything. I'm just in awe with everything and having the time to be able to immerse myself and focus on everything about Islam. In Detroit, there's multiple communities that I could go to, but I'm closest to Dar Rahma, that's right in my neighborhood. So I would give advice as far as like in college, if you're in college, like the sister said earlier, find a community that you feel comfortable with. If it exists, it might not be African American, but find a community that you can identify with. Maybe in that community of Muslims, you can find a study group, you know, and you all, you know, study together and whatnot, but also go to Juma together, you know. So your Islam should always run parallel with your education. You know, it actually is not equal, it's above, but you never drop it. I mean, that's the only reason that we can exist is because of Islam. And it starts at home. If you have a strong foundation in your hometown, with your family, with your community, that's going to help you tremendously when you go, if you go away to campus, if you live on campus during college, to keep that balance. And that's the only healthy way. When we were graduating the seniors at elder class, it's like, you got to keep Islam, you got to keep Allah first. If Allah isn't first, you're just going to drown. You're just going to drown. So the balance is just to keep Allah first, keep us Islam in the center of your life at all times. And you will thrive. You will see your success will be off the chain. Alhamdulillah.
Sorry, Nuruddin, want to take that question? The balance between the secular education and then after education in the secular life with your pursuit of Islamic studies and Islamic development.
So, alhamdulillah, I think it's crucial that we all know the foundations. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Amin is teaching here on the Masjid Muhammad Facebook platform, and I always recommend Seeker's Guidance to people, and there are so many other programs that no matter what, you need to learn your foundations, so foundational fiqh, foundational akida, just so that you're sure that you're practicing correctly and believing correctly. Beyond that, you know, to me, and Allahu Alam, it's really up to individual interests. Maybe some people will take an interest in fiqh and go further with that, or in Aqidah or in Sirah and go further with that. But the crucial aspect is the foundation. And once you have that, then it's up to you what other types of knowledge that you want to pursue.
And if you could give some advice to sisters and brothers in relation to the topic we having. So you're talking to both sisters, brothers, young males, young females. What would be, if you could think of one central piece of advice that you would give them relating to this topic, what would it be? Sister Sophia, you could go first, inshallah.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. I would say you really have to do some deep soul searching as far as what you really want to do. It's truly a gift to know early in life what exactly you want to do and have like a passion for that and just be focused on it and just go right after it. So before you go to school, you should have a plan. Have a plan based upon what you're really passionate about doing. Doesn't mean it can't change, but it should be pretty solid. Now, when you get to college, it's a good idea to have and this is another gift or another treasure to have, is a really good guidance academic counselor that can help you sketch out a plan based upon the courses that you take. And that's undergrad and graduate. A really, really solid long-term plan. And that, again, it goes back to what Sister Nura was saying, like 20 years down the road, they have to have that type of foresight into your career, understanding that things are going to change. Like right now, no one could have even planned for this. Allah is the best knower. So all these people that have all these degrees in so many different areas, they're losing their jobs. So again, that's why your Islam is so important. We rely on Allah, not on what that we got because Allah gave it to us. It still goes back to Allah, because Allah can take it and He can make it worthless. He can make it worthless. Just like the president is printing out money, it's like paper. Maybe one day it won't even be worth it. It'll be room stacked of paper, because Allah determines what the value is. So again, having a solid plan, asking Allah, beg Allah to show you what is His plan. Where does He see you in your long term? And we don't want to have long hopes, but as far as education, just having a plan so that you're not just kind of like, because you don't want to amass a lot of loans in the event that you have all these loans to pay back and your income doesn't support paying it back. So having a solid plan, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send you an academic counselor that cares, that's going to put the time in to really help you put in a solid plan. So alhamdulillah.
Sister Nordine?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything Sister Sophia said. And I would simply sort of repeat what I said earlier about having a larger intention that is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whatever degree that you're getting is beyond yourself. And even if it's a degree that you're primarily getting it because it pays well, that's okay. Just what are you going to do with that money that you're self-sufficient, inshallah, so you don't have to depend on other people, or that you're able to give a lot of charity or benefit the masjid, whatever it is, so that it goes beyond yourself, inshallah, is what I would advise. Ideally, if it's also something that you can enjoy in the long term, that's also great. And absolutely, if you're, especially because of the loan issue, if you're going into college today, I would definitely recommend to any young person to really do your research. Alhamdulillah, I don't think anything can really compete with the college experience. However, the college experience is, for me personally, isn't worth the debt that you accrue. So if you're going today, if someone told me they wanted to study psychology, I don't know that I would tell them to go to school unless they were going to go all the way, get your master's degree in like school counseling, where you have a guaranteed career, or go and get your PhD and become a psychologist, something that is a bit more guaranteed. Outside of that, alhamdulillah, education is free all over the place. So do your research as to what I'm trying to get at. Do your research as to what actually pays, so that you can pay off those loans as soon as you get out of school. And of course, scholarship is also an option as well. And that it's worth your time. And then again, secondly, something that you enjoy, inshallah.
Sister Nora, inshallah, we were closing out, so we wanted to have each one, and Sister Sophia and Nuruddin went before you. If you could give one piece of advice to our adult men and women, our youth, male and female, in relation to this topic that we had tonight, you have one advice to give them, what would it be? You're mute. You're still muted.
Okay, I'm unmuted. One advice to give them, what would it be? I guess I have to go back to, and I understand that STEM is not going to be for everybody. I get that. For those that feel that they have the capacity for the mathematics, the physics, and the science, for those that feel that they have the capacity for that, and they can find a profession within the STEM field, my advice is to go for it and to go all the way. Take on the debt, because the money is going to allow you to pay the debt back probably in the first 2 or 3 years. I'm telling you this. This is not a lie. This is the absolute honest to goodness truth. Look it up. Look up how much money you're going to make in these, professions that you go into, and do the math. The numbers will tell you. So that's how you decide, do you take on that debt? If you're going into a STEM field and you go into a bioscience, for example, you go into chemical engineering. Electrical engineering is a really big one, where we just can't produce enough electrical engineers in this country. The projections for that are just staggering. So if you feel that you have the aptitude and you can find fulfillment in that area, go for it and go all the way. If you don't feel that you have an aptitude for anything in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics field, but you want to go to college and you're faced with, do I go to college and take on all this debt? My advice is no, don't take the debt on. And I know some people are probably going to be shocked that I would actually say that, but there's so many other things you can do to make money. Before I went to school, I made money to take care of my kids and pay my bills braiding hair. And people think, well, how did you make money doing that? Well, African American women know how much money they pay to get their hair braided in those millions of braids that women put in. So that's how I was supporting myself. It wasn't a degree, it was me braiding hair and making a lot of money. So there's other things, that you can do. I would recommend that if you don't want to handle the rigor of the college life in the STEM field, a secondary option is a trade. What's wrong? What's going on? Why are we not? There's a big push in this country to get more people into trade schools, right? Because again, we're not producing enough. And right now, there's a lot of scholarships. There's a lot of opportunity to do that. It's a lot of money to be made in that field. It's a lot less debt that you would have to worry about taking on. It's less college. So I think trades is a viable option if you don't want to take on the traditional rigor and go into the STEM in college. But if you're just going to go into debt to get a degree and get into a profession that's only going to pay you $50,000 or $60,000, it's not worth taking on that debt. You'll be paying that back forever. So I don't want to babble, but that's my advice.
And there is one topic that we unfortunately will not be able to touch tonight, and maybe as you examine, review what we've talked about, maybe look at the comments, and that topic was entrepreneurship, because that is another way. For me, I didn't go the education route, but I'm telling you, I'll give all y'all salaries a run for the money. But I did it through entrepreneurship. And I went through school, I went through a lot because of being able to do my own business. I traveled the world in many countries because I was able to do my own business. So, and it facilitated my Islamic education too. So I was able to do two things at once: make money and learn at the same time. And so this is important that some people are not, given to education or learning. They may not have that skill set, but they are good at other things, and we also should need to teach them other ways out. So with all that things together, I think we can, we need to tie our ropes, that all of us have something to offer. No one is insignificant. And we need to build confidence and courage within ourselves so that we can change the direction that our people are going. And this is what we're trying to do here at Masjid Muhammad with the Black Imams Roundtable, with the classes every morning. We're trying to put us in a position for empowerment for the future. So I thank y'all greatly. There were some sisters that were supposed to attend to technical difficulties. We couldn't get them on. But inshallah, I would like to continue this again, further it, how should we say, expand these ideas and actually show practical steps how they can achieve all the things that we're talking about. Because it's nice to say what everyone has done. Now, how do I do that? I got you. You're successful. Now show me how to be successful. I want to share a story with you quickly. And I didn't have my camera on because it wasn't about me. It was about y'all. So I took my camera off so the concentration would be solely on y'all. But I had a meeting with one of the owners of the Hard Rock Casino in Atlantic City. He's one of the owners. And we have a young brother here who's, mashallah, he's doing good work in the community, and he does like ride outs with BMX bikes, and he's doing a great job with the youth in that. So these vultures, they wanted to take his idea and use it for their interests. And so he came and got me, said, Imam, I need you to go to this meeting with me. And so this man, white man, he's sitting in this big casino. He's worth about $45 million himself. And he's looking, and literally looking to manipulate this young black man, right? Who from the streets he don't know. So I told them, I said, listen, when you go in here, just be quiet, right? Listen to him. I'm going to show you something. Don't be intimidated. Just listen to him. So he's trying to force them to give him all their ideas so he can snatch. So he says, tell me your plan. I stop him. I said, tell me your plan, right? And he's looking. Well, they know Imam Amin. I have a reputation in my city, so they know me. I says, and I want to know your plan. He's want to know their background. I said, tell me your background, right? And his face was really frustrated. Like, who is this blah, 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 coming here telling me? I said, tell me about yourself. And he told his story because we wouldn't give him anything. So he told his story. He was a drug addict. He was working in a union, operating engineers as a trade, but he was on drugs. His family was wealthy. He was an embarrassment to his family. They took him in rehab, put him in rehab. He got himself together. His family gave him a contract with them in their construction company. He got a loan from someone, and that's how he got all the way up to be a multimillionaire. Got some contracts. So two highlights was him. He was privileged, and somebody gave him a break. He himself was a weak, deficient white guy, really. But he got a break, and he was privileged. He was privileged by his father and family having a construction business, and someone gave him a loan despite that so he can do major contracts, right? It wasn't that he was so crafty. Not saying he wasn't crafty, but that wasn't the sole factor. What we got to teach our youth that you may not have all those things, and you can still succeed when we teach you how to be crafty. You got to work a little bit harder, as you said, Sister Nora, but let us not be so intimidated by others. Let us not be people who feel as though we can achieve. We can. And we have great minds. What y'all show tonight is among our sisters, we got some great minds. And y'all need to continue in this path to put it out. That's my long talk. But really, seriously, this is important. Many people are going to benefit from it. And I will hope that this is not the first, but is only a beginning of a long journey for us in empowering our people. Lastly, in that effort, I got to do a word for the sponsors. I'm going to come on camera. Education, very important. What I'm pushing us to do, and this is the beginning of the new Islamic year, is that I would like us to read a minimum of 25 books this year, right? Reading is essential. It is the first command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Iqra, read. This book, it was written by a famous scholar in the 8th century named Badruddin ibn Jama'ah. And this book, The Etiquette of the Learner. And this is a book we're going to start with first, and we're asking everyone to read. The Arabic text we don't have, but it's called Tadhkirat al-Sami' wal-Mutakallim fi Adab al-Alam wal-Muta'allim, right? This book will give you a guide to the importance of seeking knowledge, the importance of learning, and the mannerisms of the one who learns. Because there is adab for learning, and we need to do that. So this is book number 1 that we're going to start with. And each month we are going to do 2 books that we would hope that everyone complete. And after the year, we should complete at least 25 books, minimum. Reading is power and education is power. So I ask all of us, the link is there to get the book and start reading. And once you learn the importance of knowledge and the value of knowledge and its place in Islam, both religious knowledge, worldly knowledge, and universal knowledge, all of that is important, because we don't just have religious obligations, but we have to maintain the world as well. So all of these things got to come together to build strong communities. I'll give you each 2 minutes to close out, starting with Sister Sophia, Sister Noureddin, and Sister Nora, and I'm finished. Then Noureddin, you have to close us out in dua.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum. I just want to say thank you to all the panelists, Sister Nora, Sister Noureddin, and also subhanAllah for Imam Amin for inviting me. I was humbled to be a part of the panel. He broke me out of my shell. I was so nervous to join. So I hope that what I said was a benefit to the audience. And inshallah, if he has me back, I would love to come back again. Alhamdulillah. Shukran.
Alhamdulillah. I don't necessarily have anything brilliant to share. I am appreciative for being included on this panel. I feel that my fellow panelists, I'm humbled, very brilliant minds. And it's good to see that. It's good to know that there's other people out there like yourself. You're not, the lone one out there. I hope that this will be beneficial to some people. I hope that this will inspire some younger Muslims, to go into the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I always promote STEM because, that's just my thing. But overall, I thought this was beneficial. I don't want to ramble, so that's, pretty much all I have. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah khair to Imam Amin and for everyone who came and listened to us speak and to be on this panel with Sister Sophia and Sister Nora. I benefited a lot from them and everything that was said. on the panel as well as in the comments. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase us in beneficial knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our knowledge, allow our knowledge not to allow us to be arrogant. Ya Rab, please bless us with the best in this world and the next. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. And
بسر أسرار الفاتحة. Inshallah, we'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock to continue our post-Fajr classes in the book Risalat al-Mu'awana li Sayyid al-Imam Abdullah bin Alawi al-Haddad. May Allah reward you all. May Allah increase you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.